I think yoga really emphasizes the point that we have an intuitive side of ourselves that is beyond that which is just linear memory in the body. We can touch into some wisdom within ourselves that comes naturally. It's called like a heart brain. It's a scientific fact that the heart has neural tissue, sometimes more than the brain does. And confidence also brings you into a place of coherence and heart. And when you have the confidence, you're touching into that heart wisdom, and the heart wisdom practically can move you into a place where you can actually access a practical information. Through yoga, we learn how to access that quality, the intuitive wisdom of the heart.
In any aspect of our lives, when we're able to tap into that higher wisdom that is always available to us, then that really helps us create things that are beyond what our mind can comprehend. Hello and welcome to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, the host of the podcast, a yoga and meditation teacher and philosophy lover. Each week you will hear eye-opening interviews with the different teachers of the Yandara Yoga Institute, located in beautiful Baja, Mexico, along with other teachers that pass through here. This life-changing knowledge, shared through authentic, heartfelt communication, will help you live a happier, more fulfilled, and connected life. Let's dive in. Hello, welcome back to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, and today I have a very special guest. He is the co-founder of the school, Yandara. He is a teacher of almost 60 years, 60, and just a wealth of information and knowledge. Welcome to the podcast, or welcome back, Craig Perkins.
Thank you.
So today we decided to speak about the connection of Hatha Yoga when it relates to meditation. And I thought that was a wonderful subject to explore and deepen, especially with the community here. So I'll let you take the lead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think what happens to people is they go to a yoga class and they notice that something good happens. It could be they go to a spinning class and something good happens. But it appears that there are certain qualities of the yoga class that have an effect on people. And often people don't know why that affects them the way it is. And I think it's nice to know not just, hey, but we are yoga teacher trainers. So as a yoga teacher, you know, we say, well, I had a nice experience doing some yoga classes to such a degree that I thought maybe I'd be a yoga teacher as well and share that. And they would replicate a class and hopes that they have the same experience that everyone else had. And I always feel like, well, wouldn't it be nice if you knew exactly how you created that problem, from like the science of it, energetically, physiologically, and then instead of just doing it by rote, you actually know what effect certain postures are going to have, the timing of it, the timing of the day, looking around at the people. You might have a preconceived idea of what your class is going to be. And you look at the people and you say, what's going to work for people right now? You know?
Meaning, how can you create that effect that you have experienced, that magical yoga, after yoga practice feeling as a teacher?
Yeah. Yeah. So you know how to recreate that in certain circumstances. I had a group of four elderly couples, two elderly couples, and they wanted me to teach them a yoga class, but their range of motion was So how are you going to teach? They can't do down dog and they can't sit in the lotus pose. How are you going to teach a yoga class? And it's just understanding that we are on a very physiological level. We're just trying to bring a little life force to all the tissues of the body, to all the different muscles and ligaments and everything because if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you use it, it gets stronger and better. The foundation of exercise is that. So when you know that, instead of just having a knowledge about 60 or 70 different yoga poses, you realize that for them at that particular moment, none of the 60 or 70 poses we have classically thinking about being yoga poses would be workable.
Let's go into what is a Hatha yoga practice. What does that mean for the person who doesn't know?
Sure.
Because explaining first that and then going into, is that really possible to create that effect that we're talking about without being able to reach those poses yourself?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not sure what we mean about Hatha yoga. It's just simply having basically some sort of hour and a half exercise routine. That's basically what it is. That's the physical side of yoga, Hatha yoga, you might say. And so this is just an exercise routine. You have spinning, you have calisthenics, you have gym workouts, you have all sorts of workouts for the body, and you have a specific emphasis in yoga of certain positions of the body, certain reasonings behind it. And also one of the elements that differentiates sometimes an exercise class from a yoga class is a certain energy that we're trying to create, a certain ambiance that it's hard to quantify this. It's a very intuitive thing, but there is a science of intuition of like, wow, this is a beautiful space to move your body through. If there's loud noises and things like this, I was asked to teach a yoga class in a hotel down in Cabo, and I get there and there's like loud music, possibly over the legal limit of decibels. And, and just the machines going on and all this stuff. And I said, well, that's not really conducive to what we're looking for here. We're not realizing it's just not entirely physical, but it's also the energy field that you're moving through. Is it nice lighting? Is it this soft music? Is it beautiful energy? Like you get a certain feeling about this. And this is also physiologically beneficial. It's not just, oh, this is nice. It actually physiologically affects the molecules of the body and the cells of the body of how they respond to exercise. So there's that sort of spiritual, intuitive side that is ideal for us to move our bodies through. So that's sometimes what it differentiates from different styles of yoga. But as a spinning teacher, you can create that. You have great energy and electrification, music and everything. That quality is also there. So it's not exclusive of yoga or India. It's a system. It's a principle that's self-evident, you might say.
I find that a lot of people, at least this has been my experience, I started doing yoga because of the physical practice of yoga, being in shape, feeling healthy, limber. And I stayed because of the energetic effect that it had on me.
Right.
So how does a teacher go about creating that space?
I would say primarily it has to do with exercising our intuition. That we're often talked about, we have all our knowledge in our brain. And so we remember things and we're taught things. And so we repeat things. And this is the usual education model. And I think yoga really emphasizes the point that we have an intuitive side of ourselves that is beyond that which is just linear memory in the body. But we can touch in like a quantum physics point of view, which is knowledge beyond that which the five senses can relate to. That we can touch into some wisdom within ourselves that comes naturally. It's called like a heart brain, recognizing that the heart actually has, neural tissues that will absolutely touch into this, where poetry comes from. Where does poetry come from? When Bob Dylan won the Pulitzer, the prize for poetry or literature or something, he was saying how at the age of 16 years old, how could he possibly know these esoteric poetry, these one-liners that he did. And he didn't sit there and say, what's a word that rhymes with red? Information just came from him. This is where art comes from. People don't learn art. They don't learn music. They are coming from a place beyond that which the linear mind can work with. And through yoga, we learn how to access that quality, the intuitive wisdom of the heart. And from that point, it's surprising how quickly someone can trust that and teach from that place. We have, we have people who come to our class to become yoga teachers, and they've had very little experiences. And I just think, hey, if you touch into your heart wisdom, as we really emphasize here, that you're going to have some of the best yoga classes you ever had in your life from people who just started yoga, because it's something else is going on. Yeah. And we're seeing it, that's sort of surreal, or what are we talking about here? It's actually very practical.
I totally understand what you're talking and relate to that. I find that really the most insightful and connective and really beneficial ideas that have come into my life have come not from the space of like thinking really hard and forcing myself to find the solution, but in that space of letting go and connecting to the intuitive heart wisdom, which is, in my view, kind of like connecting to infinite wisdom that is accessible to us through that path. And that's where you really find the gems. So let's dive into that. How does one learn to connect to that place?
Well, one thing is just to know it exists. Like, I appreciate you. Like, you're an artist, I can see, like, someone else could sit here, do exactly the same thing, but it wouldn't come across the same way. I've noticed this about your podcast and how you come across. You have this artistic wisdom about you, you might say. So if we can see that, what one person can do, another can do. You see, that happens. Bob Dylan does this. Many artists, many musicians, you see, what is that quality about them? So that's the first step. You say, it's possible.
Thank you.
And then the next step from a real practical level is the simple quality of recognizing that there is a heart brain. There is physiologically a place in the body that is manifest that. It's a scientific fact that the heart has neural tissue, sometimes more than the brain does, and more of a dimension than the brain is restricted to. So, oftentimes, the very practical place is just move from head to heart, from thinking to feeling, and basically, here's the kicker, from fear to love. Love is a strange word. It's like, Eckhart Tolle doesn't like the word very much, the famous philosopher or spiritual guide, because it means too many different things. But that process is quite simple. And actually, you just, how does this feel, rather than what's going on up here? It's a big habit to break. We are totally identified with the thinking process, So just putting our attention there is very valuable. And one of the elements of any type of exercise, and particularly in Hatha Yoga, is the attention put on that. Is to, when we are focusing on our breath, we're feeling the energy, the physical sensations of the breath moving in and out of the lungs, which is very close to the heart. So you are getting your attention there, and when you're in your body and you're feeling physical sensations, you're also getting into your body and touching into that place as well. So that's just in a real simple, practical way. Also, the association of people who are creative, who are, we actually entrain to people's energy. And it's a funny thing to say, but the more we're around people who have a certain quality, we will adapt to that. If we have people who are angry and busy in their brains and frustrated or who God knows the areas that people can get to that are not ideal for us, and then, it's just really helpful to be around that positive energy. We see something. And, we're a big proponent of heart math, and where you can actually quantify when you're in your heart and when you're in your brain. It's part of the process here of the yoga teacher training is we hook you up to we hook, I'm not going into it a lot, but, we hook up to the, it's your pulse, it's your heart pulse put on your ear, and it picks up on the vibrations of the heart. It's not technical stuff to get into, but it can register when you're in your heart and when you're in your brain. And that helps us very practical ways. Like, oh, I didn't realize what it was like to be not thinking. I didn't know. It's like, anyway, so we quantify that. It's a huge, simple stepping stone that is part of our training, that we work with individuals individually when they come. Everyone does that. You can look up heart math. I think it's the easiest way to research that without me going into it in great detail.
We have a podcast episode about it also, so check it out if you want to learn more.
But I guess, and I think women particularly are really good at being in their hearts. They're really good about their intuition. This is an integral part of the feminine side of things, male, female, but just following that natural inclination you have of trusting your perception of things.
Yes, and I think this is something that has come up a lot in conversations and also in the podcast, that podcast episodes we've done lately, is that many women, I would love to hear also your opinion about it. Yeah. Actually, a friend of mine said the other day that really the feminist movement didn't give the effect of equality for women. It was more about like women trying to be men. Yeah. And in that way, losing the strength of femininity and the power the feminine energy has naturally, the one that you're speaking about now. And now I think what is happening is, meaning like a woman as a boss will try to be domineering and, make everybody do things her way instead of allowing the feminine qualities of leadership to emerge and standing in that strength. And what we've been talking about it is now we have to retrain ourselves as women to really allow our femininity, our softness, allowing the pace of the feminine, which is different than the masculine, the moon cycle and all of that, allowing space for that and embracing that and not having that mean that we're less than or not standing up to men or equal to men, but embracing that.
Yes, I think you're right on target with that, finding that balance. But, and also just to know, part of the process is that an integral part of this experience of touching into the heart brain is not the thing of happy or sad. It's, we often think about like, well, I'm really happy. Oh no, I'm really sad. And I think yoga is about, what I'm saying is to inspire somebody as to what do I get out of being in my heart brain? What do I get out of being this intuitive self?
What is the benefit of it?
Besides being able to teach a very good yoga class, you might say that's practical for us, is we're touching into a place of beyond happy and sad, that two-sided thing, duality, you might say, not really duality, but two spectrums, is there's a certain peace, there's a certain love and grace that is natural in us. And when you can touch into that place of love and grace, it's hard to put into words. You say, oh, this is good. Oh, this is good. So you were talking about what are the practical things that we can do. And, that would say is to be around people who have that quality, to practice putting your attention on the body, and and also to see the benefit of that, to see the benefit that could come through in terms of health and well-being.
So what is the benefit of allowing yourselves or being able to access that space?
Well, I think it, there was a real practical case. There was a young woman here who had cancer. Mm-hmm. And when, I don't know what they test for. They test for something, T cells or God knows what. They said that after coming to the training, the T cells have never been lower, or, they've never been in a better position. It's hard to, define that, in terms of diagnostic tools, but there is something very clear there. The molecules just sparkle. They just come alive.
The scientific explanation.
Physiologically. I said there's a story where, this is sort of a mundane emotional thing, but it could be more than that. Is that, the woman's in the office and she goes off and she has a date and she falls in love. What is that quality? I'm not sure what that means, but there's something beautiful that happens that opens the heart, some magic that occurs. And then the next day she goes back to work and the workers say, "Oh my God, you're radiant." Yeah. A physiological change. Yeah. That's palpable. Yeah. That's pretty clear.
What a good example, because that is very relevant to all of us. We all have seen that. We've experienced it. It's a very, very everyday life example of what happens when you quite literally are in your heart or in that space of love, and how immediately you can see it. Yeah. And just speaking about how we can access that space, not only when we're in love with another person, but when we're in the vibration of love.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm quickly interrupting the episode to extend an invitation. If you are interested in deepening into any of the subjects we talk about on the podcast, we offer many different experiences on our beautiful grounds here in Baja, Mexico. From 9-day modules such as sound healing and yoga nidra, to breath and meditation, as well as 200 or 300-hour yoga teacher trainings, and many different shorter retreats. Check out our website, yandaracom, to see all the information about the different experiences. Let's get back to the episode.
So then, as a practical element, as a yoga teacher, you start to see the physiological benefits of that. And you start to notice when I, as a yoga teacher, do certain things in a certain way, that there is an energetic response. And, it's exercising that quality. We're just not educated in this realm, but all it takes is so little to grasp onto this. I remember I remember there was this one guy who came to the yoga class, and he was a football player, and macho guy, and real cool, nice. But then I was talking to him about this power of intuition, and he was kind of looking at me like, "Oh my God, what spaceship are you from?" That kind of thing. He's like, "Okay, here's what we do, guys," But it was wonderful that he saw, because it was all women around, so he didn't have any machismo. Not really machismo. He was a nice guy, but sort of that masculine shield. The masculine shield, yes. Yeah. He didn't have any. Couldn't bounce that off anybody. And so he got that he was going to be like, "Wait a minute, I want to excel at this area," And I remember he sat back against this pole like this, and he watched the process of these women noticing the shifts that occur in different people as they teach and what effects they had. And all of a sudden he was like, "I got to get this." That really male thing. And it's funny because he came to a place of being really, really good at that. He said, "Okay, I'm going to be good at intuition."
How you can use your, ego in your advantage.
Exactly. The higher achieving ego thing. It just depends on where you're going to direct it towards.
Yeah.
But it is so simple, and yet for some reason or another, it's it is a simple process. Another practical way of, and this is a very stepping away from the question a little bit, but more of a practical thing, is that as being a yoga teacher, is that you all you have to do as a yoga teacher, basically, is I tell the students, because they're in 17 days, and how are they going to remember 80 poses and all the cueing and everything that goes into that,
Yeah.
And I just tell people, if you can memorize sequences, if you can memorize down dog to up dog or whatever that sequence, that is required as memory. It comes by rote, but it also comes by memory. And you can describe what your body's doing. You can teach a yoga class. If you can say, arms reach overhead, feeling the energy, like raise my fingertips up, not, something like this. When you can describe what your body's doing, because it is kind of an intuitive process, it's a feeling what your body's doing, then people can pick up on that. You know the sequence, you can describe what your body's doing, and actually energetically and pacing wise, it really works for people. It's far better if you know all the classic cueing as well, as a combination of those two things. But another side of that is confidence. Like a practical tool is to have confidence. And when it's confidence, it comes with being accomplished in a sense. But when you have a formula like that, where all I have to do is memorize a sequence, describe what my body's doing, and I can create a really wonderful class. True, a lot of other work needs to be done. But, and you have, hey, listen, I can do this. And confidence also brings you into a place of coherence and heart. Because it's not fear-based. Like, I am confident. When I'm confident, I'm not afraid of making a mistake. This is a quality around that. I'm saying a practical thing is to have confidence in what you're doing. Not false confidence. But a lot of people can memorize sequences, and they can describe what their body's doing. A lot of people can't necessarily memorize cueing, specific cueing for 30, 40 poses. Some people just don't have the memory for it. But you can do that. Then you create the confidence. And when you have the confidence, you're touching into that heart wisdom. And the heart wisdom practically can move you into a place where you can actually access a practical information. Information can come to you without going through here. You touch into this place. And I remember the first time I experienced this, I was 8 years old, and our neighbor got up and said, it was the middle of the night, I realized that my aunt died. Well, whoa, I was sitting there, whoa, telephones are difficult for me to comprehend. But how did that happen? There was no communication, no wires there. And how does she tap into that information? And we can tap into that information in a lot of ways, not just dramatic things like your aunt dying or something. We can tap into information beyond time and space.
I think access to that heart wisdom really allows us to not need to memorize 40 postures in a sequence. It allows us to go way beyond that. It helps to have the basics. I think that helps also with confidence. You know that if you lose that connection, you have something to fall back on. But what I can relate this to is that it's way beyond even being a yoga teacher. It is what helps us become great yoga teachers. But in any aspect of our lives, when we're able to tap into that higher wisdom that is always available to us, then that really helps us create things that are beyond what our mind can comprehend. Deepak Chopra talks about it. I don't know if you know this book. It's called 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And I've spoken about it on a podcast because it was just so meaningful for me. He speaks about the infinite field of potential, which is what I think you're speaking about in this heart wisdom. And it's that space within us that is really connected to the infinite wisdom that is the creative wisdom of this whole universe. And also practically as a yoga teacher, I think what you say is really relevant, because when you're able to really just describe what you are feeling in your body, and first you need to notice what you're feeling in order to be able to describe it, then it helps people like draw their attention, because their mind might be thinking about the fight that they had or what their boss asked them or whatever it is. When you're able to tap into that space within yourself, and then you draw the attention of your student to that space, it really elevates their experience.
Yeah. I think, like, for instance, this whole system doesn't work if you're a brain surgeon. No, I mean, people are like, well, wait a minute. No, I have to, no. I said, yeah. You can't use this intuitive system as a brain surgeon or even an airline pilot.
Really?
Well, no, you can. It'll enhance it. But I mean, you have to know the practical elements.
Yeah. You should probably know them.
Yeah, I say, listen, even if you're a physical therapist, you have to know some very practical information. But as an exercise teacher, as long as you're not hurting people and you're just moving people through their bodies, you're a great teacher. That's not true if you're a brain surgeon. Hey, I got this great feeling about what I should do today to take your heart.
But I feel like that's where innovations come.
That's innovation. It's true.
Right?
But I mean, people come to yoga teacher training, they think, oh, I've got a lot of responsibility here. I've got to do this right. I've got to put this, hook this artery up in a certain thing.
Right.
No, come on. It's just exercise. It's just safely moving people through different positions of the body to bring a life force to, if you don't use it, you lose it. If you use it, it gets better. This is not brain surgery. No, but it's an important point, because people project that concept instead of saying, hey, some things in life, like music, does not require us to know every single note.
Right.
You can intuitively feel it, and you can move something forward in that way. So there's a whole different, our education system is based so much on, on this thing. I think there's an example, this friend of mine went to Juilliard, and great musician, generally speaking, was qualified for that. And, but they emphasized so much on the linear, if you
the practical
side of it, that she says, I've lost my gift. They've mentalized my intuition.
Yeah.
And it's funny, our education system, because to me, it is difficult to convey that concept of intuition in a general, system. So unfortunately, we lose that ability to see how important it is. So there's a few things anyways that I see.
What do you think is that aspect of ourselves that maybe puts a lot of pressure on showing up in a certain way as an artist, meaning taking us from the heart to the head? Where does that come from? We were talking about musicians and yoga teachers that like this pressure to do a perfect class or
perfect notes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Well, I think it's just what I described. Apparently that's what she said the school was like. It just took that energy away.
But you're right that it shows up in so many places. So many people are afraid to be yoga teachers, even though, I've seen people who are way more advanced than me in their physical asana practice, let's say, and they still have something holding them back from going to that yoga teacher training, not even committing to a yoga class, just going to the training. What do you think that is? What's holding them back? What can we release that can allow us to take that step?
Well, it's like I said previously, it's moving from head to heart, from thinking to feeling, from fear to love. And I think that understanding how the fear body works is fascinating. That's a whole psychological, I trained pretty much as a psychologist, and how our different fears of things, the different experiences in our lives have made us fearful of everything in our lives to a certain degree. Oftentimes the world is dangerous. Like I say, public speaking, number one fear for people, public speaking. what are they afraid of?
Exactly.
They're afraid of somehow or other making a mistake and people judging them at lower. They're afraid of self-worth.
That's so true. The number one fear is not really a physical fear. It's not like it's not going to determine if you survive or not.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So, and the beautiful thing is that the brain has the amygdala has so many relationships to fear. Its domain is safety, survival, emotional nurturing, and self-worth. There's all of the amygdala is trying to say, hey, don't put yourself in a position to lower your self-worth by screwing up in the public speaking.
And I guess that's also about survival in a way, because it's like being part of the tribe. If you're out of the tribe, you can't survive. Yeah.
So that's, so many elements there. And the fascinating part is the heart brain does not know fear unless it doesn't know the past and future. It only knows if there's a lion attacking you.
Right.
It's probably good idea to run away.
Probably.
But it's not like imaginary tigers. I mean, like, like my father had a beard and he beat me. And now my boyfriend has a beard and I don't want to be with him. These are kind of ridiculous associations with things like this. Whereas the heart would say to that same person who has a beard, the mind would be triggered by it because it's trying to say, hey, listen, people with beards are dangerous and it's trying to help you out.
Said by a person with a beard.
Exactly. Whereas the heart, and we're so overwhelmed. We have so many issues that have triggered us in the past through decades of psychotherapy. You're not necessarily going to clear all those things. And I think, as Eckhart Tolle said, and in the Heart Math said, the teachers there, that when you go into your heart, it can immediately moves you into a place of no past, no future. So the very things that troubles all our lives, when we've been humiliated by, when we were 3 years old or like 12 years old, making a public space, talk or something like this, and people yelling at it, booing us or whatever. It doesn't know about that.
Right.
All it knows is what's present moment.
Yeah, that's the modern day survival.
Yeah. So it really helps in a practical way. And not only does it move us into a place of fearless, of not having fear, but it also elevates our consciousness, where we move into a more, it's hard to quantify linearly, but a more uplifted state. Yeah. It's fascinating that our worst enemy, which is public speaking,
which teaching a yoga class is in a way public speaking.
Yeah. And, but anyways, it's so complicated stuff to get into, but anyways, you get the picture. So there's so many benefits. We ask a very practical question. How can we be better yoga teachers? Hey, put your attention from here to here.
Yeah. I've studied this as well a little bit. And what I have seen and realized is that a lot of times we take things super seriously, which makes us fear. The fear that is stopping us is because we take it so seriously. We put so much expectations on making it perfect and doing it the right way and getting a good result. And that takes away from the playfulness. Like you mentioned that, like, don't take it so seriously when you go to teach a yoga class or when you're practicing yoga. Like once you take it too seriously and you become too rigid, you kind of lose the flow of energy that's available to you.
So many practical ways, tightens you up.
Yeah. Going away back to the masculine and feminine, because as you said, it is easier for women at least to allow themselves to access that space. How would you speak to men about accessing that heart space? As you gave that example, it might be harder.
I would say hang around with women. It's a silly thing to say, but it is. There's a couple, more than one or two instances where men have come. We only get like one or two males every training. So the men are influenced. And I noticed that when they have the influence of wise, caring, which a lot of women are very wise and caring. What are the attribute of women? They're wise and caring as managers. You know, that beautiful combination of stuff. I mean, it just pops into my head that is that when you're around this energy and you can see the value of it, even intellectually, oh, hey, I may not be able to understand that precisely, but Craig says to hang around women, then we will have, we will develop that very quality of certain type of women, things like that. And so, but the male thing is tricky. I mean, I've done a lot of men's work and understand that. There's a lot to go into. There's a lot of, what do I say, the deck is stacked against us a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, there's mostly women listeners for the podcast, but maybe speaking about it in the relation or in the perspective of how can a woman invite men in her life to allow themselves to enter this space with them.
Yeah. Again, you know, it's just simply when you're, when you're choosing who to be around, don't look at it from your mind's attraction, look at it from your heart's attraction.
Many of the listeners are women. And I think that a big struggle for women is how do I connect on a heart level with the man in my life, whether it's a father, a brother, a partner. How would you recommend for women to approach this type of connection or this level of connection with the men in their life?
Yeah, I think that we call it satya, and that is the truthfulness. And I think that fearlessly being honest and finding the communication, keep saying the communication, how do I feel? The woman can say, hey, I feel uncomfortable when you're saying these things.
Yeah.
I feel this kind of thing. And be ruthlessly fearless around, hey, this is the way I'm feeling. And I think, you know, I've done a lot of work with couples and how to get them to communicate more effectively. I would say, well, specific things. You communicate with somebody and say, hey, when you're sitting in the right environments, relaxed and everything, you say to yourself, how does my body feel? And how do I feel when I look at you? Those are, I would say, a psychological practice that I think really helps. This is the way my body feels, and this is the way I feel about you. And that seems to have a tremendous effect. And also taking turns clearly to not interrupt. Okay, and how do you feel? I feel in my body a sensation across my chest or anywhere in the body. When I look at you, I feel wonderful. You know, well, that's a nice communication, isn't it? That's exactly what happened right now.
Yeah,
Instead of me making up a story of I've known you for a certain length of time and you're dressed a certain way and you remind me of something, you know, and I go like, oh my God, no, this is how I feel about you. And I think that works.
Yeah, I love that because it's really about what I'm picking up on that is that a woman can create that space for the man to feel safe to be in touch with his heart space or with his emotions. And I also think that's a really important point because a lot of us get caught up in like, you did this, you were never doing that, you in the blame and the stories and in all of the mind stuff. And once you move to communicating from how you feel, how you want to feel, it really changes the conversation. Yeah.
What was that practice? Is that there's a whole system down of something with communication. What do you call it?
It's about like truthfulness and something.
Non-confrontational communication.
Exactly.
This is another word for it. But I found it practical for people. It'd be great if I had remembered the name.
You can look it up.
Yeah, I can look it up. You can print later. But it does feel like the whole science of speaking from sensations and not saying, hey, you're a horrible person. Just say, oh, I feel really uncomfortable when you say these things, the classic thing. So it'll come to me after we're finished.
Of course.
It'll be a great value then.
Well, if you find it, you can send me the link and I'll add it to the show notes and then people will have access to it. Yeah. Great. I think we ended up covering the topic that you intended to in the beginning, and I think it worked out perfectly and came together so nicely. Is there anything else you think is important to mention or add? I guess
the most important thing is that to have confidence in yourself, that we are continually bombarded with sort of advertisements, hidden persuaders of like, you're not good enough until you own a 2025 Mazda. It's so ingrained in our soul. I mean, it's so simple. Yeah. But to really appreciate the fact that you're incredible, you know, and have that reinforced. Yeah. And to have confidence that you are incredible. Like, you know, it's quite something, really.
How does one build their confidence?
Well, I guess ultimately through the practice that we just talked about, you know, of touching into your heart wisdom. But just to be told that, just to be around people who say, hey, this is what I feel about you. And we do these practices, you know, where people get feedback, you know, as yoga teachers, and people speak, and they said, and they're like, they thought they come up a certain way, and they get feedback from their peers, and they, oh, you come up amazing. They say, well, really? And so they have no idea. Their perception of who they are is less than actually how it comes across. Yeah. Due to our social conditioning, really. And sometimes indigenous people have great confidence at early ages. And I guess we're just the exact opposite. But they get feedback from people.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point that you brought up there, because really we so often get caught up in these stories, but just asking the other person or getting feedback from another person about ourselves, about them, helps us clear out the stories.
Yeah, it's fascinating working for, well, at least 25, 30 years doing yoga teacher trainings to see what it's important for people. Like, what are the things that they have come here to learn, to the practical applications. And so anyways, it's fascinating to see what works and doesn't work.
It is.
Yeah. Trial and error.
Craig, I'll ask you as a wrap-up question.
Okay, I'm ready.
What are you curious about right now?
I'm curious about how the positive effects of positive things we can do are going to affect the problems that we're facing in the world right now. I'm interested to see that goodness overcomes difficulties, you might say, and it's a little, it's a little heartbreaking to see things are going on, and how that will come out. But I have a great deal of faith that goodness prevails. But it's hard to see that sometimes. Yeah. I really like to be a place that people can come to.
Well, I've definitely experienced that in the 2 weeks. I'm coming from a country in war. Yeah. And it has truly helped me. I really needed to kind of relax and let go of all that stress that you just feel in the air. So I've experienced that. Thank you for having me here. And I also want to kind of second that and remind people that each one of us have the ability to contribute in our own way. And this work is really important and really meaningful. So don't give up, even when it looks like there's so much to be against. All of us together have a lot of power. So keep going.
Yes.
Thank you, Craig. This has been so lovely.
Okay.
Now, after this time to nurture your mind and your spirit, we invite you to take a moment to consider others. A kind wish might come to mind. Know that what we learn becomes more valuable when we apply it and share it with others. So share this episode on Instagram stories, tag Yandara and I, or share with a loved one so that more people can benefit from it. Our hope is that the search will lead you home to who you already are, to what was always there. We'll be back next week with more inspiration, honest conversation, and insight into the energetic world around us. Thank you for listening and watching.